Good luck translating humour. Have fun.
It sounds so nice, but it's probably like ha ha ha. It's actually really difficult to translate humor, so good luck.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Hancox. I'm a freelance translator who translates German and Dutch into English, and I specialise in creative marketing texts.
Hi, I'm Belinda. I'm a freelance translator as well. I specialize in marketing translations and I go from German to English and English to German.
Welcome to our blog turned video/podcast, all about how to translate humour.
Okay, so because we've worked on a blog post together before, which was about transcreation, it'll all be linked down below. We wanted to do another project together, and Stephanie had a really good idea. Stephanie, can you tell everyone a little bit how you thought of this topic for our next blog post?
This is just something I come across quite a bit when I'm translating. Like I'll see a joke every now and then, and it's always one of those things that at first you're quite excited about because you're like, oh, it's funny, it's a joke, and then you're like, oh no, joke. What do I do? So I thought this would be a really good topic for a blog post because it must be something other people encounter a lot as well. So yeah, and it's just quite fun, isn't it, to try and think of different ways that you can deal with humour, different things that other translators do. There are a lot of different examples out there, and it was really fun, I think, just to bring them all together and put together this blog post.
So when you told me about this idea, I was 100% on board. It's something that because we had this topic of transcreation before, it's something that goes perfectly together. I was super excited. And like you just mentioned, handling funny business is no joke. If you're on the receiving end, it's hilarious. You can move on with your day. But if you actually have to translate something like that, it can be quite frustrating sometimes. So I was super, super happy to be on board. So in the blog post that we've written together, you mentioned really, really cool examples from your work. Would you like to share one of them and just kind of explain the process behind translating that particular humor or joke?
Yeah, I mean, the one that really kind of inspired the whole idea really was this one I came across with the German grammatical gender. And there was this joke about, she's talking about taking a kid to school and then putting out her bins, and then she uses the German he to refer to either the bin or the child. It's like, oh, he wanted to get out of my hands. And I got to this joke and I was like, no, what do I do? Because obviously in English, a he would only ever be her son. She wouldn't be talking about the bin as a he. So it was one of those things that you could think, well, I'd just lose it if I just translated it more literally. So how can I keep that same flavour of it being quite a fun, like quirky blog post, and still have something that makes sense in English? So yeah, that was one of my favourite examples, and I tried to come up with this like little joke that was quite different from the original about her son and being like, once I've got rid of one of my smelly friends, I get rid of the other. Which is quite a risky joke because you have to know that your client's going to be okay with like making fun of a child. But yeah, it's I think it's one of those things. If you can come up with something like that keeps that same element, you've got a much better piece of text because it's doing what the original did, which is engaging the reader.
Yeah, exactly, and making them laugh, which 100% worked. I think that was my favorite example of yours. I loved that one. It made me crack up. And because you mentioned in that part of the blog, you mentioned about asking the client if it's okay. Like first of all, you're straying very far away from the original text. But also, you need to make sure because it could be an insult. Some parents might be more sensitive to this. So, in real life, as a translator, how did you handle kind of dealing with this straying away from the original?
I'm a big fan of leaving like notes whenever I like submit anything. So I'll put comments and be like, I've done this for this reason, but if you don't like it, we can do something else. So I think that was the approach. But in this instance, they were fine with it. So yeah, it's one of those things though, definitely, and especially between different countries, people have different concepts of like humour. I think British humour is quite different from sort of German humour. So you have to think, well, I think this is funny, but they might not necessarily be okay with it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of just like leaving the client a note, or you can always just send them an email and be like, what do you think of this?
Was she okay with it though? Was she like, yeah, go for it, mock my child, it's fine? And Stephanie said, let's do a blog post about translating humor, the very first thing I thought about was Scrubs. Scrubs is a TV, an American comedy show. It's my absolute favorite thing in the world. Big fan for 12 years now. And this is something that we wrote about in the blog post. So there's a joke. So there's a joke that the main character JD tells, and in English, the original joke goes, "Did you hear the one about the skeleton who couldn't go to the party? He had no body to go with." And then, and it's not that funny, is it? Like, I'm laughing, but it's actually not that funny. And then here comes the German translation. So what they did on German TV, because obviously you can't, the no body doesn't mean anything in German. In English, it kind of has the ambiguous meaning. In German, it doesn't. So what the team behind Scrubs did for the German version was they came up with a completely new joke that obviously had to have the same amount of, words, similar, to take the same amount of airtime. And so the German joke goes, "Wissen Sie, was der größte Vorteil bei Alzheimer ist? Dass man täglich fremde Menschen kennenlernt." And, Stephanie obviously knows, but for anyone who doesn't know German, so in English it means, do you know what the best thing about Alzheimer's is? You get to meet new people every day. So I just thought that was a class act of how they handled that, the translation team. I thought that was really brilliant.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting example. Like, that must be such a difficult thing when you're doing dubbing for a TV show and you get some kind of joke like that and there's just no equivalent. So you just have to, and trying to find something that's about the right amount length as well, so that the character's not talking for too, a short period of time while this joke is going on.
Imagine, yeah, and you're like, is my audio wrong? Like, what's going on? Oh, I love that one. Is there anything else that you wanted to kind of point out in the blog that you thought was just so hilarious?
I really liked your one-liners in it. I thought that was really fun. Yeah, you realise that is like it's quite interesting how sometimes you can just translate them directly, and they work. So that's always quite fun, especially if they're ones that you don't actually have. Because I think a lot of the times there are like certain cheesy jokes everyone uses in their native language as like an example, and it's fun when you hear the ones from other languages that are slightly different.
Oh
that you
yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
I
that
enjoyed
is
that.
really cool. We have the one about the horse. So a bar. Oh, see, I already destroyed it. A horse walks into a bar and the bartender says, "Why the long face?" And that joke works exactly the same in German. I thought that was really, really cool. So we just thought of something really, really interesting about when you are a translator and how scary translating humor can be. So Stephanie, you had a really cool example of how to go about that in a CAT tool or a translation tool. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, one of the things I always think with marketing texts in general, when you're trying to translate them, it's often good to use translation memory software because you get that consistency, and also like saving your work. But the problem with it is that you're working very much segment to segment. So if you've got something that you want to be funny, you can get very hung up on, well, this exact segment needs to be funny because this segment in this piece is. So what I often try and do is, like, if you upload the file and then you've got the full text that you're looking at, so you can think about the flow, and if maybe you can't make that particular sentence funny, but you could make something else a bit more funny to kind of get that same flair throughout the text, then that's quite a good approach as well. So always just think about the text as a whole rather than just each segment and what its equivalent is.
I love that. Yeah, that's a really, really good tip, especially because we talk about it in our blog. We say that, at the end of the day, don't try to be too close. You should never be too close anyway to the original, but especially if you're doing anything to do with humor. So just be free, be creative. And like with Stephanie, like you just said, if it's not in that one sentence, if that sentence just won't work, then just put it somewhere else. I think that's a really good idea. At the end of the day, you want to make people laugh. And that's the most important thing with a joke, not the accuracy. So definitely stray away from accuracy if you have to, and just go with the flow and have fun with it. Okay, so to give everyone a rundown of our 5 ways of how to translate humor, Stephanie, go ahead with your tips, please.
Okay, so number 1 would be, if you've got something that works and is culturally appropriate, just stick with it. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Just go with what's working. Number two would be if you've got something that absolutely does not work at all. Good idea to think of an alternative, something that keeps the same flavour of the original, especially if it's supposed to be a fun, whimsical text. Make sure you've got something that does the same type of thing. And then the third one would be if you've got a pun, try and find an alternative pun in your target language, something that hopefully has the same kind of meaning and that works in a similar way. They would be my three.
And we have number 4 would be to if the joke doesn't work again at all in your target language, try to be really creative. Come up with an entirely new joke that has approximately the same duration as the original, especially if it's for TV. And number 5 is make use of these wonderful things called one-liner jokes, or Einzeiler in German, because you'll often find that they work exactly the same as we saw before with the horse walks into a bar kind of joke. So then we have a quick tip for you guys. If you either are a translator or you're just interested in idioms, international idioms, there's a website called phrasen.com. We'll put it down below so you can play around with it. And what you can do on there is enter your search term, for example, Pferd or horse, and then it shows you all the kind of idioms or sentences in the other language that work as well. So that might be fun. So you might find something that's very, very similar to your original keyword. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for bearing with us in this blog turned podcast / video. We had a lot of fun making it. We hope that we taught you a thing or two about translating humor, and thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.